Hi, welcome back to this platform. If today is your first time, we are here to learn and acquire knowledge. On the 31st night, I posted a video about a man in the Bible called Nicodemus, who went to Jesus at night and asked Jesus a question. In reply, Jesus told him, "No man can enter the kingdom of God unless they are born again."
Good evening, fellow citizens. As we stand at the threshold of a new year, I come before you with a heart full of gratitude and renewed determination. Tonight, as families gather across our beloved nation, from the shores of Keta to the savannah plains of Bolgatanga, from the forests of the western region to the vibrant streets of Kumasi and Accra, I extend my warmest wishes to every Ghanaian, wherever you may be. A happy new year to all my fellow citizens. Exactly 6 days from now, we shall mark the first anniversary of the sacred oath I took before God and country. It was a solemn commitment to reset Ghana and build together the nation we all deserve. I can confirm that the promise of renewal we made was not mere rhetoric. It was a covenant, and we have begun to deliver on that covenant. 1 year ago, we inherited a nation in distress, an economy on its knees, unemployment crushing our youth, infrastructure crumbling, public trust eroded, and hope dimming in the eyes of our people. We were told that the recovery would take a generation, but I knew something our critics did not know. I knew the resilient spirit of the Ghanaian people. At the dawn of the new year, I stand before you to say our beloved nation Ghana is rising again. We've accomplished a lot together in the past 12 months through prudent management and difficult but necessary reforms. We've reduced inflation from the distressing levels above 23% by the end of 2024 and are hopeful to end 2025 with inflation at single digits of just above 5%. We have achieved relative currency stability and on track to be ranked among the best performing currencies in the world for 2025. We're accelerating economic growth and creating more opportunities for our young people. We've restored business confidence and have seen a significant increase in both domestic and foreign direct investment. We've restored Ghana's credibility with our international partners, successfully completed the renegotiation of our debt obligations on terms that protect our sovereignty while at the same time ensuring sustainability. We're beginning the process of exiting the IMF program with dignity, not as supplicants, but as partners. Our young people are Ghana's greatest assets. We're beginning to see significant growth in sectoral performance. Construction, manufacturing, agriculture, and services are showing very strong growth. This is creating a new opportunity for decent employment for our youth.
Our president, His Excellency John Mahama, second coming, is a rebirth of water and the spirit. He has not allowed the institution, which is his body, to come between him and God. He has understood and has not allowed himself to be manipulated by the body of institutions. Every institution that was set up in Africa by the colonizers was set up to control Africa.
The most shocking part of this book and of the 2-year reporting project that went into it was the aid section, because everywhere I went, I saw that aid was not benefiting. Largely, there were small parts of it that were benefiting the poor, but largely was benefiting the richest people in the world, the corporations and the local elite. The second part of that is that this is not a mistake. Originally, when I first started reporting, I was like, okay, well, they've obviously not thought this out. But when you start looking at the history of it and you look at how aid developed out of the fall of formal colonialism, you realize this has been designed from the start.
Most people understand that corporations have a lot of power, too much power, over all of our lives, that often private business interests can subvert democracy and the kinds of governments enacting the kinds of policies that people want. But that can often be a vague feeling, a suspicion. Our guest today has some meat to put on the bones, however. Matt Kennard has been a journalist in this field for more than a decade, looking at how private business often supersedes and undermines the will of peoples around the world. Matt Kennard, welcome to Downstream.
Thank you for having me. Good to be with you.
We're very happy to have you back on Navarra after many years. And we've got you back on to talk about your newish book, Silent Coup, How Corporations Overthrew Democracy. That's obviously the theme of a lot of the questions I'm going to ask today, really. What's happened to democracy and what's the role of the private sector? Before we go any further, tell our audience, our viewers, our listeners a little bit about yourself. Why are you an authority on the silent coup?
Good question, because my day job is working for Declassified UK and we focus on British foreign policy. So this is a bit of a departure from that. But essentially, in 2014, I started as a fellow at the Centre for Investigative Journalism in London. And at the same time, another journalist called Claire Provost, who's the co-author of the book, she started as a fellow as well. And she'd left The Guardian to take the fellowship. I'd recently left the Financial Times. And we started talking because we had 2 years. The contract was 2 years. And the guy who gave it to us said, you don't have to report to me. You do what you want. And you got a travel budget as well. So we started thinking big. We thought, what are the biggest issues of the day in the world? Claire had been covering aid at The Guardian. I'd been covering sort of the World Bank and other places in Washington when I was with the FT. And it was kind of a meeting of minds. And we both kind of agreed that this is the biggest issue of the day, in my opinion, and hers. And I think if you read the book, it's quite a persuasive argument. It should be everyone's opinion, because what you've seen over the last, particularly since the Second World War, but this is a battle that's been raging for 400 years, because that's when the first modern joint stock company was invented in England, actually. And what you've seen is corporations have just gradually been trying to get as much power as they can from the state. Originally, corporations were chartered by the Crown. So it was a privilege to create a corporation. It wasn't a right. Then there was a civil rights battle, waged particularly in the 19th century, where lots of legislation came into place that unleashed the corporation from the state in the UK, then later the US. And then after the Second World War, this really went international. That was the age of the multinational, pretty much in the context of the Bretton Woods institutions, which were created in 1944. And that was the IMF and the World Bank principally, but also later on the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, GATT, which became particularly important in sort of greasing the entry of...
Which is now the WTO.
Exactly. In 1995, it became the WTO. It originally was going to be a WTO, but it took a long time. GATT, the formation of GATT was a kind of stopgap, and what it became were just rounds of talks. So you had like a Kennedy round in the 60s where all countries got together and tried to reduce tariffs mutually. It wasn't that successful. Certain rounds were successful. The Uruguay round led to the WTO in the 90s. But anyway, so that whole architecture allowed corporations to really go international. And the other part of this story, which is really opposite to the thesis, and I think understanding where we are today, is that after the Second World War, formal empires were collapsing at quite a quick clip, particularly in the 50s and 60s. And the people who had been in power for centuries, the imperial powers and their financial sectors, were scared. They were thinking, how are we going to maintain our control of the world where we don't have a formal empire, where we can't position garrisons of troops in a foreign place that can just take out a leader if they start nationalizing our assets or wherever it was. And there was quite a lot of conscious policy making at that time to try and create, and this sounds like tinfoil hat stuff, but it's all there in black and white in the archives of places like the World Bank, the IMF and other places. So essentially they wanted to create a supranational system whereby they could bypass rebellious peoples, bypass newly liberated countries, bypass liberation movements in the developing world.
He is aware and acknowledge that growth comes from within and not outward, like the IMF baptism. If Ghana will stand on her feet or be born again, or as our President John Mahama put it, reset. Ghana must be baptized within herself, which is the valley within. Ghana is you and I. The institution or body is also you and I. To make it clearer, Ghana must use its own resources to uplift herself, not the liquidity of outsiders through borrowing. The physical baptism of IMF is just for a short time, but the inner baptism is everlasting strength. People of Ghana, I leave you with this quotation from the Bible. Let's open to Romans chapter 12, verse 2. I read, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." The reset our president is putting in places comes with accountability, and accountability comes from within. In the book of John chapter 3, verse 5 to 6, I read, Jesus answered, "I tell you the truth. No one can enter the kingdom of God unless he is born of water and the Spirit. Flesh gives birth to flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to spirit." All what God was saying is in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 23 to 25. I read, "To be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to his neighbor, for we are all members of one body." Never condemn the holy books. Read them more and limit going to church. That will be your beginning of growth. Peace be unto you. Share, like, and subscribe. Thank you.